I, a 31-year-old man, refused to give my stepsisters any of my inheritance. My father began dating a woman when I was 8 years old. He and my mother had already split. The woman he began dating had 3 other children from another relationship, and my stepmother and I never got along. I never got along with her or her children, and this relationship only seemed to get worse when I moved in with my father when I was 12 years old. So, for context, my father is a very emotionless man. He made it very clear to my stepmother that she would not parent me, and he would not parent her children. Each will deal with their own children, a rule which he abided by, but she did not. To be clear, although he was not emotionally there for her children, he did buy them everything they wanted. They went to private schools. They always had the latest tech and money. When they came of age, he bought each of them a car. Spending money was my father's way of being emotional, and this was exactly how he was with me. All throughout my teens, she would increasingly try to control my life. What I could do, where I could go, what money I was allowed, what I could eat. If I mentioned it to my father, he would talk to her and it would stop for a couple of months and then begin again. The cycle continued all throughout my childhood. To be honest, nothing she did really bothered me. After years of being around them, they all just became irrelevant to me, as harsh as it sounds. I had no negative or positive feelings towards any of them. Fast forward to when I was 15, and this is when the relationship between myself and her children really took a turn for the worse. My father got diagnosed with cancer. As soon as he was diagnosed, he wrote a will and left me everything. The house, the cars, his money, his savings, his other properties, his business, literally everything. The will was left with his solicitor and a copy was given to him. He placed this with all his other documents in a secure place so people would know his wishes if anything happened to him. My father was given the all clear after a year of getting treatments and surgeries. It seemed as soon as he was given the all clear, my stepmother found his will and exploded. She came into my room with her oldest daughter, who didn't even live with us at that time, screaming at me. She told me I had manipulated my father and to get out of her house right now before she calls the police. I was 16 years old. How had I manipulated him? I left, as I said previously. Nothing these people could say to me would ever bother me. They were irrelevant to me. I rang my father and informed him what had happened. My father is emotionless. I have never heard him change his tone of voice, let alone get angry. He turned up to the house within 20 minutes of getting my phone call, and as soon as he was back, he told my stepsisters to leave so he and my stepmother could talk. My stepsisters came outside, and all 4 of us were there. For the first time in my life, I heard my father raise his voice. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but after 5 minutes, he came out of the house, told me to get into his car, and said we were going to get food. In the car, he went back to his normal self. My dad's never tried hiding anything from me, so I asked what he said to my stepmother. He had told her everything he owns goes to me, and that will never change. In the next few years, I don't think my stepmother or stepsisters spoke to me. Maybe mean things like hello or goodbye, but definitely not a conversation. Not until I was 18. When I was 18, my dad and my stepmother gathered me and her children and informed us all that they were buying a new family home. My stepmother's oldest daughter said, "Oh, that's nice, you'll get a good price for this one." Before my stepmother could reply, my father interrupted and informed us all that he wasn't selling. He was giving the house to me. This was his house. He had bought it before he even met my stepmother. Every one of them turned and in unison began screaming at me about how I take all my father's money and things. Along those lines, I didn't even know my father was giving me the house. I didn't even know he was buying a new one. My oldest stepsister began hysterically screaming for me to give her the house. She had a husband and a child, and she needed it. I was going to uni, so I didn't. My father then piped up with his calm, unchanging voice that the new house being bought would be split equally between himself and my stepmother. So when they pass, I would get his 50%, and they would share their mother's 50%. This did not help the situation, and instead, I began getting screamed at more. I was indifferent to them, so it didn't really faze me, and we moved on. 12 years later, I am now 30 years old. My stepmother and my father have been broken up for about 3 years. They still live together, and my father couldn't provide it for her. So 4 months passed, and none of them contacted my father. Not once. He had a stroke and ended up going into a coma. After being in the coma for 2 weeks, I reached out and let my stepmother know. I didn't delay on purpose, they just never crossed my mind. The day after I informed her, I went around to his house to collect all of his documents in preparation for his death. I wanted everything ready rather than having to search for it, and his locks had been changed. This didn't bother me. I just went home and forgot about it. 3 weeks later, my father came out of his coma and was due to be sent home. He was severely unwell, but he was alive. So I went round to my stepmother's place, got the new keys, and took him home. After a week of being home, he received a letter from his pension informing him of a beneficiary change. He rang, and his pension had been changed into my stepmother's name. Now, my father had 3 private pensions, and all of them had been changed. His signature had been forged on documents. We then went through every important thing that was of value: pension, cars, bank accounts, everything. She had changed all of my father's car logbooks into her name and his pensions. In total, around $850,000 worth of assets and money she would have stolen if he had passed away while he was in his coma. However, the one good thing from this was when we rang the mortgage company for the property they had bought together, they informed us that the property was actually bought on a joint mortgage, which means both of them own 100% of the property. If one dies, the survivor gets 100% of the property. This wasn't an assent if he dies before it sells. Once confronted with the attempted theft, she just said, "I thought you would have wanted me to have it." After this, the relationship between them soured. They both wanted to sell the house. However, she wanted 100% of it. They agreed he would get 30% and she would get 70%. He was happy to give it to her. So we were going through some more of his documents and found his life insurance documents. I knew my father was wealthy, but I never imagined how wealthy until I saw how much the life insurance policy was for, and I was down as 100% beneficiary. While reading through the life insurance documents, I noticed a small section on a cohabiting policy. So my father rang them, and they informed us that yes, even though I was down as beneficiary, she would still be entitled to claim 50% because they are legally in a cohabitation partnership. It doesn't matter that they are property unless it was a 70-30th split to him. To be honest, he probably is entitled to that because she never paid a penny for anything. He didn't care about the house, just the life insurance. Now, one of my stepsisters is a solicitor, and we were hoping that her first reaction, they are both entitled to 50% of the house. This is what we needed to legally show she is no longer cohabiting. My father passed 3 weeks after we received this. At his funeral, my stepmother and stepsisters turned up, and they were joyous, happy, laughing. This didn't really bother me. I knew how petty they were and expected it. Anyway, 6 months after my father's funeral, my wife and child were out with friends at a play area for the kids, and my eldest stepsister was there with her husband and children. I could see them staring and giggling, and eventually, they other things. Then she started to say disrespectful insurance. My stepsisters went quiet for around 30 seconds, and then started asking what I meant. I just grabbed my child and me and my wife and left. The next day, I was bombarded with phone calls asking what my father had left me. I told them every single thing I got in inheritance. I told them right down to the last penny, and then proceeded to brag about how we needed them to file for the severance, because if we did, they would block and delay it, suspecting something. I was then nonstop harassed for the next couple of weeks, telling me I didn't deserve the money. I should split it 4 ways because he was all of our father, not just mine. Then the threats started, and I received a letter from my stepmother's youngest daughter, who was a solicitor, informing me of legal proceedings they are going to take. So now, after 4 months of this, we were informed to doubt about winning the case. She was begging me to split the money and assets, or at least give them the money from the house that my father and their mother owned together. My wife believes I should just give them something to leave us alone, but that would go against what my father wanted. Me and my wife both earn good money, so we wouldn't miss it. And the only one of my stepsisters who earns decent money is the solicitor. The other 2 are desperate for money. But when I think about it, I'm constantly reminded that I don't actually care for these people, so why should I help them out? So, am I the jerk? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, no. Do not give them a single cent. Everything you received is rightfully yours and should be protected for your wife and children. I would even go as far as to send a cease and desist to your ex-stepmother and stepsisters. And if the harassment persists, take it up a notch. Do not cave and give in. I do hope that you are seeing a therapist to unpack all of the trauma you faced. Comment 2. My wife believes I should just give them something to leave us alone. This wouldn't work. These types of people will keep coming back to beg, cajole, threaten, and stalk you for more. Not the idiot. Your father made his intentions clear. You are to solely inherit, and so did his estranged wife and her kids. They are selfish and greedy. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, it's been a while since my last post, and a lot has happened in the past 2 weeks. I'll try to fill you in on everything as best I can. After winning the legal case against my stepsisters, I thought the drama would finally be over. But boy, was I wrong. The phone calls and harassment from them only intensified. They were relentless, constantly demanding that I split the inheritance with them, or at least give them the money from the house my father and their mother owned together. My wife, bless her heart, tried to be the voice of reason. She suggested that maybe giving them something would get them off our backs for good. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. It went against everything my father had wanted, plus we're doing well financially, so it's not like we needed the money. But here's where I made a mistake that changed everything. In a moment of frustration, I let it slip to my stepsisters that my father had left me a sizable trust fund, in addition to the inheritance. I don't know what possessed me to reveal that information, but as soon as the words left my mouth, I knew I had messed up. The next day, I received a formal letter from their lawyer, my stepsister, stating that they were now seeking a portion of the trust fund as well. They argued that since my father had set it up while he was still married to their mother, she was entitled to half of it. I was stunned. I couldn't believe they would stoop so low as to go after the trust fund too. But as I dug deeper into the legal documents, I realized that they might actually have a case. The trust fund had been set up during my father's marriage to their mother, and the language in the paperwork was a bit ambiguous. Panic set in as I imagined losing half of the trust fund to them. I couldn't let that happen, so I did something I'm not proud of, I contacted my father's old business partner, someone he had a falling out with years ago, and asked for his help. I knew he had dirt on my stepmother and her daughters, and I was desperate. He agreed to help, but at a price. He wanted a cut of the inheritance. I was hesitant, but I felt like I had no choice. So I agreed to his terms. What I didn't know was that my stepsisters had hired a private investigator to dig into my past. They uncovered the deal I had made with my father's old partner and used it against me in court. They painted me as a manipulative, greedy person who would stop at nothing to keep all the money for myself. The judge was not impressed with my actions. In the end, he ruled that the trust fund be split evenly between all of us. I was devastated. Not only had I lost half the trust fund, but my reputation was in shambles. As I sat in the courtroom, listening to the judge's decision, my mind drifted back to a conversation I had with my father when I was younger. He had told me that money had a way of bringing out the worst in people. I never fully understood what he meant until now. Looking back, I realized that my obsession with keeping all the inheritance had blinded me. It made me do things I never thought I was capable of. I let my anger and resentment towards my stepfamily cloud my judgment. In the end, I lost more than just money. I lost a part of myself in the process. And for what? A bigger bank account? It wasn't worth it. So, that's where things stand now. I'm still coming to terms with everything that's happened. My wife has been my rock through it all, and I don't know what I would do without her. I guess the lesson here is that sometimes it's better to just walk away from a fight. No amount of money is worth sacrificing your integrity and relationships over. Anyway, thanks for listening to my update. It feels good to get it all off my chest. Until next time, take care. Am I the idiot for expecting my fiancé to treat my kids as his own when buying snacks? I've been with my fiancé John for 6.5 years now. I have some older children from my previous marriage. Their dad passed when my youngest was 1. The kids are 14-year-old twin girls, 12-year-old boy, and 9-year-old boy. My fiancé has no children. In the 6.5 years that I have been with John, he has developed a good bond with my children. They often call him Dad, though not all the time. But one frequent hiccup in our relationship is his food/snack/drink quirks, which I consider selfish and ignorant. Like, he will go to the store and buy him and me something, and if the kids ask if he got them something, he will say no. Even if they are in the car with us, there have been a few times in the past that he would get him and me a drink, but not get the kids anything. He stopped doing that some years back, however, because I would just pass my drink back to my children and tell them to share it. He did it with me a few times as well, where he would get him and me something but not the kids. For instance, I would make pizza or something for the kids, and John would decide he wanted Chinese takeout and would go grab stuff and always come back with something for me as well, but never the children. I won't eat takeout in front of my kids, so just like the car and drink thing, I would hand my food off to my kids and tell them to share it. Prior to doing this, I had plenty of conversations with him about it and told him it bothered me. He said he didn't understand because the kids didn't need everything that we had, which is true, they don't. But I'm also not going to eat or drink treats in front of my kids while they go without. To me, that's messed up. But like I said, he stopped doing this because I would just give my stuff away, and eventually he started buying the kids drinks whenever he bought him and me something, when they were with us. But lately he's going backwards again. It's been easily 4 or 5 years now since he was like this. But the other day he brought the younger 2 kids with him grocery shopping, and those 2 kids came home with a drink, and my husband handed me a drink. I asked if he had gotten anything for the older 2 kids, and he said no, they weren't with me. So I said, I wasn't either, and gave my drink to the older 2 kids. Or the other day, he had gone to the store for me, with my $20 because I wanted a soda, and I asked him to grab my kids' Gatorade and water. He came home with 2 12-packs, one case being for me, and the other being for him. No Gatorade, no water. The kids asked for one of the sodas, and he said, no, those are mine. I asked if he used my money to buy it, and he said yes, and? So I said, okay, just wondering, and handed my kids one of his sodas, caffeine-free root beer. He asked why I would do that, and I said, I'm wondering why you are going backwards again and buying things for me and you, only after I have specifically said I'm not okay with it. Now he's back on the argument of, the kids don't need everything that we have, and said that I'm spoiling them and that they are going to grow up entitled. My only issue with this is that I am not going to sit there and eat or drink any sort of treat that I do not deserve or had worked for in front of my children and tell them, nah, sorry about your bad luck, this is mine. It's not happening. I'm not that type of parent and never will be, and he's known that since day one. He doesn't pick fights about it or anything, but I don't know. He still seems to think I'm wrong here. Am I the idiot? ETA. It was my money. I won't tolerate the ignorance here. He's not financially responsible for my children. But when he uses my money to buy himself something but not my children, when I specifically said to, we have a problem. The bills are split 70-30, me being the one who pays more. My kids aren't financially burdening him by any means, and he's pulling from the joint account 80% my money to buy these things for himself. My issue is not that he buys himself stuff with my money. If it weren't happening all the time, I wouldn't have an issue. But it's all the time. He says, the kids don't need anything. Well, neither does he, neither do I. I'm not going to continuously eat treats in front of my children while they go without. I've told him this several times. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot look. My husband and I have been known to sneak out and grab some McDonald's to enjoy at the park without our kids, but we'd never bring food home and eat in front of them. That seems pretty cruel. Plus, he's using your, or mostly your money to buy himself snacks, but not the kids? That's a little sketchy. Comment 2, not the idiot. But why do you tolerate a dude who constantly mistreats your kids? Put the kids first and kick this moocher out. You can find someone who is actually nice to kids and not hurting them. Your kids looking at that as normal in a relationship. What you are showing them is not a good example. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my previous post. It's been a week since I shared my concerns about my fiancé John's behavior, and I wanted to provide an update on what's been happening. Shortly after I made the post, John and I had a serious conversation about the issue. I expressed my frustration with his recent actions and reminded him of our previous discussions on the matter. He apologized and said he understood my perspective, but he also shared some of his own concerns. John revealed that he had been feeling overwhelmed lately, as he had taken on more responsibilities at work and was struggling to balance his time between his job and our family. As we talked, I realized that I had been so focused on the kids and my own feelings that I hadn't really considered how John might be coping with the changes in our lives. I apologized for not being more attentive to his needs and suggested that we work together to find a solution that would be fair to everyone. Over the next few days, John made a conscious effort to include the kids whenever he bought treats or snacks. He even surprised them with their favorite candy one afternoon, which put a smile on their faces. I appreciated his efforts and told him how much it meant to me and the kids. However, just when things seemed to be improving, we hit another bump in the road. My oldest daughter, Sarah, came to me in tears one evening. She confided that she had overheard John on the phone with his sister, complaining about how much money he was spending on the kids and how he felt like he was being taken for granted. I was shocked and hurt by this revelation. I had always believed that John loved my children as his own, but now I was starting to question his true feelings. I confronted him about what Sarah had heard, and he admitted that he had been venting to his sister out of frustration. He said he didn't really mean what he had said and that he was just feeling stressed out. I told John that his words had deeply hurt both me and Sarah, and that I needed some time to process everything. I also suggested that we consider couples therapy to work through our issues and improve our communication. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on our relationship and the challenges we had faced over the years. I realized that John and I had never really taken the time to discuss our expectations and boundaries when it came to parenting and finances. We had just assumed that we were on the same page, but clearly we weren't. I also thought back to my previous marriage and how my late husband had always put the kids first, no matter what. He had been such a loving and devoted father, and I knew that he would have wanted me to do what was best for our children. After a lot of soul-searching, I decided to have another conversation with John. I told him that I loved him and wanted to make our relationship work, but that I needed him to be fully committed to being a parent to my children. I said that if he couldn't do that, then I wasn't sure if we had a future together. John was quiet for a long time, but eventually he said that he understood where I was coming from. He admitted that he had been selfish and immature at times, and that he needed to do better. He promised to make a genuine effort to be more involved with the kids and to communicate with me more openly about his feelings. As I write this update, I'm hopeful that John and I can work through our issues and build a stronger, more united family. But I also know that it won't be easy and that we have a lot of work ahead of us. I'm grateful for the support and advice I've received from this community, and I'll continue to keep you all updated on our progress. Thanks again for reading, and take care. Am I the idiot for wanting to close our open marriage after I got my mojo back? My husband and I, both in our mid-40s, have been together for 25 years. I love him very much, and our lives are intertwined. Our economy, family, and friends are all connected. So when he told me that he still loved me but wasn't sexually attracted to me anymore, he sees me as his best friend and companion. I understood where he was coming from. He didn't want to lose me, but he wasn't attracted to me. We own our house and an apartment in the city, so we agreed to open the marriage, and we had some set of rules, such as no relationships and no engaging in intimacy activities with others in our marital home, no dates, spending money on the women, or taking them on vacations, etc. All romantic aspects are just between us, but he can engage in casual intimacy with other people. The same goes for me, although it's different because men take me out to dinners and hotels, but I don't pay. This arrangement has been going on for a year, and I had a very difficult time in the beginning. I cried all night when I knew he was in the apartment with someone else. My best friend recommended that I download Tinder, and at first, simply talking to new people helped. Over time, I realized there are so many other people out there, and I started to feel attracted to men other than my husband. I didn't realize I could be turned on without love. After a few months, I started meeting guys. I slept with my first partner 2 months ago, and we still see each other sometimes. I have also met 2 more. Interestingly, my husband started wanting me more since he started sleeping with his girlfriend. I don't know how to explain it because logically it should have been the opposite, shouldn't it? Can someone explain why? But before we opened the marriage, he only wanted intimacy maybe a handful of times a year. It has increased the more he meets other women, and now we have intimacy regularly, about once a week. Yesterday, as we were having a lazy morning in bed with Netflix, he said that he didn't want this open marriage arrangement anymore. He suggested that we close the marriage again because we now have great intimacy and he loves me. He thinks I am the sexiest and most beautiful woman he knows. To be honest, I had a panic episode because I don't think he has truly come to a realization or anything. I feel that he likes and wants me now because of the open marriage and not in spite of it. If we close it, he might go back to feeling unfulfilled. I have done much research about open marriage, and the goal is to strengthen the existing relationship, which is what has happened to us. I said no to closing the marriage. He was very unhappy, but I told him that we could get a divorce if this arrangement no longer worked for him, because I have done everything in my power to save our marriage, and I feel that I succeeded. I don't want to go back to when we almost lost each other. He asked me if we got divorced and I started dating, would I want an open poly relationship? I said no. I would want a monogamous relationship. So he said that I was an who didn't want to give him the same decency as my hypothetical future partner. Now for a few comments before the update, comment 1. I have done much research about open marriage, and the goal of it is to strengthen the existing relationship, and this happened to us. I said no. He was very unhappy, but I said that we can divorce if this didn't work for him anymore, because I have done everything in my power to save our marriage, and I feel that I succeeded. You can't possibly think that your marriage is stronger and that you've succeeded in saving your marriage, right? Side note, it's hilarious that the agreement is that he can have intimacy with other women, but not do any of the things that would cause women to want to have intimacy with him. But OP can get wined and dined before having intimacy with others. This marriage is over. Everyone sucks here. Y'all messed around and found out. Comment 2. Not the idiot. I might be completely wrong, but it sounds very much like it was his idea to open the marriage. I would want a monogamous relationship implies that that's what you wanted all along. So if I'm right, these are merely the consequences of his own actions. I imagine the irony is not lost on you. This is almost a cliché, to be honest. Husband asks to open the marriage. Wife is reluctant but agrees. Husband already had his eye on someone. Wife isn't happy about their relationship but realizes that she can date too, and is wildly successful at it. Husband doesn't like this one bit and asks to close the marriage again. Wife laughs. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my last post and for all your support. It means a lot to me. So, here's what's been happening over the past few days. The day after our conversation about closing the marriage, my husband seemed distant and lost in thought. He went out for a long walk alone, which was unusual for him. When he came back, he told me he needed some time to process everything and that he was going to stay at our apartment in the city for a few days. I was taken aback, but understood that he needed space. While he was gone, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was relieved that I had stood my ground and expressed my feelings honestly. But on the other hand, I was worried about the future of our relationship. I kept replaying our conversation in my head, wondering if I had made the right decision. During this time, I met up with the guy I've been seeing regularly. As we talked, I found myself opening up to him about my situation with my husband. He listened intently and offered a fresh perspective. He pointed out that my husband's sudden change of heart about the open marriage might be coming from a place of insecurity, now that I was also exploring other connections. This got me thinking about our relationship dynamics in a new light. On the third day, my husband returned home. He seemed calmer and more composed. We sat down to talk, and he shared some revelations he had during his time away. He admitted that he had been selfish in the past, taking me for granted and not fully appreciating our relationship. He said that seeing me thrive and grow in confidence through our open marriage had made him realize how much he valued me as a partner. However, he also expressed his struggle with jealousy and the fear of losing me. He revealed that this stemmed from his own insecurities and a past experience where an ex-girlfriend had cheated on him, leaving him heartbroken. This was the first time he had ever mentioned this to me, and it helped me understand his perspective better. We had a long, honest discussion about our needs, fears, and expectations. We both acknowledged that closing the marriage now would likely lead us back to the same issues we faced before. At the same time, we recognized the importance of setting boundaries and prioritizing our own relationship. In the end, we decided to keep our marriage open, but with some adjustments. We agreed to have more frequent check-ins with each other, to be more transparent about our feelings, and to make sure we were still nurturing our own connection. We also decided to set aside dedicated time for just the two of us, without any outside distractions. As we navigated this new phase of our relationship, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come. Our open marriage had been a challenging journey, but it had also brought us closer together in unexpected ways. It had forced us to confront our own insecurities, communicate more openly, and appreciate each other more deeply. Looking ahead, I know there will still be ups and downs, but I feel more confident in our ability to face them together. Our love for each other has been tested and strengthened through this experience, and I believe we can continue to grow and evolve as partners. Thank you for reading and for your continued support. It means the world to me. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.